Oh, don't look now, but yes, that guy, Derek Carr, leading the NFL in passing yards and passer rating. A tough test as the Saints are perfect on the season. They match up against the Philadelphia Eagles. And good news for all the Vikings fans out there. Yeah, Justin Jefferson, a little dinged up with that quad injury. Ready to give it a go. It is going to be a tough test. Good news for the Vikings. They are home in Minnesota as they get the Houston Texans. A preview of both of those matchups and the rest of the slate. We got you covered here on Game Day Preview.
I don't do this for the paycheck. Step out on the field and hear the crowd roar.
Together we're strong, baby.
I know you are.
Every time the ball comes your way, you make a play.
'Cause it's in my blood. I'm in this for the love.
In the thick of the night, deep shot Jefferson, 97-yard touchdown.
Well, the stars are going to be out. We showed you Justin Jefferson, and that guy, C.J. Stroud, last time I checked, an absolute machine out there. No turnovers on the road would certainly help. The sophomore quarterback hasn't thrown a pick in 7 consecutive starts. Hopefully for fans of Houston, that streak will continue. Welcome to Game Day Preview. Mike Yam. Oh, it is good to have you back. Steve White's ready to rock and roll. Cynthia was upset. She was stuck in the studio with me last week.
No, I love being with you, but we love having you back, especially because we called each other, we matched. No, we just so simpatico, we knew.
That's right. And it's good to be a buffer.
Yeah.
That's my new role.
Yeah, I was not given the memo on the color palette, although I almost pulled that out of the locker. That did not happen. A ton to get to here in terms of a Week 3 slate. I know what every fan wants to know. Who do I got to play? Who's got to sit in our fantasy leagues? Well, our expert Michael F. Florio a little bit later on the show will give us some fantasy advice, but hopefully this list will help you make some late decisions here. The Houston Texans, we've been loving up this game. Joe Mixon, inactive because of that ankle injury, and I'm keeping my eye on Vita Vea at the bottom of that list, inactive for a matchup against the Broncos. For a little more context on what is transpiring, our NFL insider Mike Garafolo joins us right now. Mike, always looking sharp. You complimented me last week, so I gotta give it back to you. I like the pocket square as well. All right, Justin Herbert, I was walking around our studios with my coffee getting ready for the show. I saw him warming up out on the football field. The list says he's active. What do I need to know?
He is active, Mike, and I do know this. As of the middle of last week into the latter part of the practice week, the Chargers were talking about the possibility of using multiple quarterbacks if they needed to do so. Well, their inactive list is going to tell you the story here because Justin Herbert is active, but so is Taylor Heineke, and so is Easton Stick as well. And not even using the third emergency quarterback, which they could have, which means that player would have been available, but only if the other two had to leave the game due to injury, and then only that third quarterback could play. So the fact that all three are active tells you that the Chargers are going into this game wanting the maximum flexibility at the quarterback position. So Herbert is active. He will start, but they are going to keep a very close eye on that high ankle sprain, and high ankle sprain is not usually something that a player will play through. I know there's different degrees, but something that a player will play through immediately after suffering it. So keep a very close eye on this game, on Justin Herbert, and what the Chargers decide to do at the quarterback position.
Yeah, the fantasy angle on this one still to come, not to mention we got Omar Ruiz, one of our reporters in Pittsburgh. He'll also provide a little more context here on Game Day Preview. Meanwhile, Jordan Love, I didn't even know we would have this conversation. I know he's inactive right now, but give me some context around what we could potentially see in the near future with the Packers quarterback.
This was a little more cloak and dagger with the Packers and Jordan Love because he he warmed up, as you're seeing right here, and then was declared inactive, and Matt LaFleur said he would take it all the way up to inactives. They didn't downgrade him yesterday. Remember, last week they downgraded him from questionable to doubtful on Saturday. This week they called up Sean Clifford from the practice squad, but left Love as questionable. One, it's the cloak and dagger routine like I just said, but two, it also means that he is getting closer, and the hope is that Jordan Love will be able to play in this next game against the Minnesota Vikings. for the Green Bay Packers. He's getting closer. His mobility has improved. We're going to have to watch his status as we get throughout the week. I'm sure it's going to be limited, as Matt LaFleur told the media this past week, at least maybe to start the week. But Jordan Love definitely getting closer to returning. If he comes back after missing only 2 games, that would be on the very early side of that window that we talked about for his possible return.
And I know it's a story that you'll be tracking on the Insiders on NFL Network all week long. Mike, I know there's always news that trickles in right before kickoff. You'll have us covered a little bit later here on the show.
Don't let the 4 kids fool you. I'm always dancing. Hit the Michael Jackson.
He's doing his dance in the end zone.
Dancing.
Holy moly. You can see he's got moves.
I'm always dancing. Hit the Michael Jackson. I'm a dancer in my day. I had to lure their mom in somehow.
See you later, bye.
I'm always dancing.
Camaro's got 4.
Come on, I like that.
Let me be free. Let me be me. I'm always dancing. Hit the Michael Jackson.
He says he's got moves. Showing them off.
Dancing.
You know, there's a part of me that wish I saw that before the show so I could call David and find out how accurate those dance moves really are. Something tells me.
We saw it. He showed us. Yeah. $15,000 worth.
Someone's writing that check. And by the way, David Carr certainly can afford it. Excuse me, Derek Carr can certainly. Well,
David can too.
David too can also pay that bill. This is going to be an awesome game, right? I mean, from an Eagles perspective, you and I were watching Monday Night Football together. We saw the Eagles have a little bit of a collapse here, and this is not going to be an easy test. Biggest storyline that you're tracking from a Saints perspective against the Eagles?
Well, to me, it's the fact that the Saints are running the ball. I mean, they're averaging, 185 rushing yards a game. We saw the big plays last week against Dallas. Remember, Derek Carr only threw the ball 19 times. That man right there, Alvin Kamara, has a huge opportunity because the Philadelphia Eagles have been getting gashed. I mean, we saw against the Falcons. We saw the week before. They're giving up about 160 rushing yards a game. And this isn't to mobile quarterbacks. They're getting pushed around at the line of scrimmage and worn down as the game goes along. And Cynthia, as we've seen with this Saints offense with Clint Kubiak and that outside zone run scheme, they are moving people off the line of scrimmage, and that very much could happen again today to a thin defensive front in Philadelphia.
We basically only seen that outside zone running scheme.
That's
like
it.
I haven't seen anything else. But how different would we feel if the result last week from Monday night, if Saquon would have caught that ball, or if Cam Jurgens hadn't had those penalties that cost them so many yards? Yeah. Because Jalen Hurts in this offense can overcome a lot of the things that we're seeing. Perhaps a lot of how we feel going into this Eagles and Saints is colored by our perception that we didn't expect the Saints to be in this position, and we thought that the Eagles would be coming into it 2-0. Like, if you were to tell me those two numbers, we'd all be like, well, the Saints are the 1-1 team, right? If you had said that kind of blind resume style. But I'm looking at the opportunity here, and just some of those like getting on the same page things with Cam Jurgens specifically allows Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley, they could potentially control the ball. I'm curious to see what happens should the outside zone not work. Because they've got like 2 tricks in their bag so far: play action and outside zone. Yeah. So what happens then?
A.J. Brown's not playing this game.
That's right.
That's a big blow for the Eagles offense.
Yeah. You know, the wild thing was, and you made reference to, a couple plays here and there. We're talking about, 2 teams that are sitting at 2-0. I think the Next Gen Stats had it at like 99.3% late in that ball game. They should have closed it out.
It's a big rut row.
Yeah, there was some I mean, look, we're talking about one reception from Saquon Barkley. We're having a very different conversation. Meanwhile, the reason why the Saints are getting a lot of love is they demolished the Dallas Cowboys.
Yes.
And now all of a sudden, you got a really tight game from a Ravens perspective. Also, kind of desperate here. You think there's one key that we need to focus in on in terms of the Ravens having success?
And it's something that showed its head the first 2 games. I mean, the Ravens are a run team. That's their identity. Well, they go out and get Derrick Henry and haven't figured out how to actually use him yet. Now, we saw last week his workload increased to about 18 touches, but after they went up 23-13 in the fourth quarter, he only touched the ball once the rest of the game. He is supposed to be your closer. This is why you get someone who can do this to people. He can burn out the clock, and instead they went to Justice Hill and Lamar Jackson to run the ball, and the Raiders capitalized on that. So I think this is a game where we're going to see more Derrick Henry. Remember, everyone thought he was going to be going to the Cowboys. In a role more so as a closer. He may not get more than those 18 touches, but they've got to figure out, Cynthia, how to use him more effectively.
Always be closing, right? You saw up close and personal, what did the Ravens defense do that was potentially the key to us changing how we feel about this Cowboys offense? They're allowing so much yak. It's unbelievable. The yards after the catch. I mean, first of all, if we show the play where number 17 there goes horizontal, that one shouldn't be counted because he doesn't, at least not subject to gravity like the rest of us. But when you talk about like game one, Rashee Rice, it was like 70% of his yards were all yak. When you look at how the Brock Bowers operated against
Insane.
all yak. So that is a really interesting point because you know who's really good in space? CeeDee Lamb.
CeeDee Lamb,
as
pretty
it
good.
turns out, right? And we haven't seen him running out of the slot as much as we're used to. But should they run some of those things that we see were just absolutely gut-wrenching last year for opposing defenses, that could be how we change the way we feel about this Cowboys offense.
Yeah, last couple of weeks, Steve, and you've seen this Ravens team. You've pointed out some of the deficiencies that they've had on the defensive side.
They're getting schemed up. They're getting schemed up on defense.
They were the best team in the NFL on that side of the football a year ago. 28th right now for the first 2 weeks in terms of points allowed. 53 points that this team has given up. That is very un-Raven-like. So we'll see if they're able to rectify that. Meanwhile, Justin Jefferson, a little banged up with that quad injury, ready to give it a go. He is so cool. For a little bit more on this matchup against the Texans, our Tom Pelissero has got us covered.
Vikings wide receiver Justin Jefferson will play today against the Texans 1 week after he hobbled off the field with what ended up being a quad bruise. I just talked to Coach Kevin O'Connell a few minutes ago. He said, based on what he's heard from Jefferson, what he's seen on the practice field, they believe he's pretty close to 100%. It's going to be full go today. I wouldn't look for Houston to shadow him with Derek Stingley Jr. They've got Kamari Lassiter playing really well on the other side. Maybe mix some things up, focus on getting pressure on Sam Darnold. For the Texans, the backfield is really beat up. No Joe Mixon, no Dameon Pierce. I am told Cam Akers is going to get the start. It'll be a committee approach, but if he plays well, look for a lot of Akers today. Yam?
All right, meanwhile, it's time for Road Warriors. It is presented by Courtyard Marriott. You just gave reference to some injuries here from a Houston perspective. Yeah. You're focusing on the other side of the football because maybe that defense got to step up.
Well, maybe it has stepped up, and we haven't talked about the Texans defense because we're so enamored with their offensive weapons and C.J. Stroud. But the Houston Texans front seven is dominant. They had 7 sacks last week against the bad Bears team, mind you. But Will Anderson, right, Danielle Hunter coming back to play against the Vikings. The guys on the inside. And their linebackers, Azeez Al-Shaair and Henry To'o can get to anywhere they want to get to and deliver a punch. I think this is going to be a significant problem. They're going to show Sam Darnold some things to confuse him. I think this Texans defense will be the storyline we're talking about post-game.
Well, I obviously went to college with the defensive coordinator of the Vikings. It's a great story. I'll tell it to you sometimes. But when I'm looking at what Brian Flores does, he blitzes the most since he started becoming the defensive coordinator in the NFL. And you know what C.J. Stroud does? Yeah, he just lights up the blitz. You do not want to blitz him. Brian, I'm calling you right now. Please do not blitz C.J. Stroud. He will light you up. I don't care about revenge in the sense of I just don't think Stephon Diggs cares anymore. This is too many X's ago. To me, it's still Nico Collins. And if you're a fantasy player and you need a wide receiver, Tank Dell. Those are the two I would really focus in on here for the return on investment. Nico at the high end and then Tank at the moderate end.
I love it. A little more context on some of the wide receivers. Michael F. Florio joining us a little bit later here on Game Day Preview.
What about Steve Al 3 beeps to call Flores, though?
I know.
Wow.
I kind of want to hear that story, by the way. Oh, Dobbins, he's going to be working real hard today to match up against the Steelers.
Justin Herbert walks up on you, you know, like.
The guy is just a beast. He's like a human computer chip.
Don't blink. If you're a blinker, cut your eyelids off. Don't blink. I ain't blinking.
Ball is caught. It's stolen away.
Oh!
Come on.
What? Ball in the hand, plus red. Woo! Hell job! Hell of a job! Yeah! Yeah!
It's a fine line between, you know, drinking wine and squashing grapes.
This is an all-you-can-eat buffet right here.
Things that we live by, such as the standard is a standard. The standard is a standard.
You know, the knowing of the standard that is the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Who's got it better than us? Nobody!
We do not care.
That montage alone, there's a lot to unpack. Yes, Justin Herbert covered him when he was in college. Definitely a big dude. If Mike Tomlin wants to talk wine, the two dudes he wants to do it with, sitting right here at his desk. And the standard is the standard, Coach. From a Chargers perspective, we gave the news a little bit earlier. Mike Garafolo was with us. Justin Herbert, active here. It doesn't even matter if he's active or not because the plan of attack has been run the football in a heavy dose. Can they do it against this defense?
That's a big question. Look, in week 3 is usually where we start to really see teams' identities. We know the Chargers' identity. It does not matter who they're playing against, whatever. They're going to run the football, right? Eventually, they feel the dam is going to break like it has the first 2 weeks. But the Steelers are a different monster. They've allowed a total of 153 rushing yards. And this is against good run teams, right? Like Atlanta. Denver could run the ball a little bit, not against the Steelers. And now you have Justin Herbert playing on a high ankle sprain, and he's got gangsters like Alex Highsmith and T.J. Watt coming at him, Cam Hayward from inside. All 4 of their front positions are going to get after him and basically even dare the Chargers to run because they probably don't think that Justin Herbert's going to be able to get back and hit some of the explosive plays in the pass game.
8. That is the number. Points per game allowed is what the Steelers are giving up on average these first 2 weeks of the season. Yeah, the defense has been stout. More on this game from Pittsburgh. Omar Ruiz is going to be joining us here a little bit later on Game Day Preview. Meanwhile, Caleb Williams has always got our attention, and he's taken some big hits. Sacked 9 times over the first 2 games. He's on the road in Indianapolis, where Stacey Dales is standing by.
All eyes will continue to be on the first overall pick, rookie quarterback with these Bears, Caleb Williams, who has faced a world of pressure already through his first 2 games this season. I asked Williams this week what he's learned about some of the pressures that he's seen. He's been sacked 9 times already in totality, and he said number 1, communication, and really just how vital it is and how much it has to improve with his offensive line. And then number 2, faster, quicker in-game adjustments. That is something the Bears have been tinkering with all week. Certainly something that would help him would be a run game. The Bears have just 155 rush yards thus far this season, facing a Colts defense that has given up 474 rush yards. The Bears are still looking to figure out some run game combinations that they like to marry the run with the pass. An opportunity to do so against these Colts today. Although the Colts, their pride is on the line. As nickel cornerback Kenny Moore told me, this is a prove-it type week, a gut check, if you will. They want to get back on track with a win against the Bears today.
An 0-3 start, Stacey, not good. You know, the game is the game. Guys get hit. I've felt bad, though, for Caleb Williams these last 2 weeks, man. This dude has been annihilated.
He hasn't had a shot. I mean, a lot of people are really criticizing him, but he has not had an opportunity to really do anything. But Stacey said it right. They've got to run the ball against a very susceptible run defense today against the Colts. And this is where Shane Waldron's got to break the norms. His play calling has been all over the place, right? Hand the football off. You've got DeAndre Swift. You've got Khalil Herbert. You've got Rashawn Johnson. Yeah, your offensive line is taking a lot of heat. Well, the best way a lot of times to fix an offensive line is to let them move forward. Push, let them get a run game going, set up the play-action passing game, and this could be the game where Caleb finally breaks through.
Yeah, this is a Colts team right now looking to avoid 0-3 to start the season for the 3rd time in the last 25 years. He's not the only rookie, Caleb Williams, that we're keeping an eye on.
Mason Murray was hurt for the first half last season. Back to Donald, launches, end zone, Harrison! Caught! First NFL touchdown for Marvin Harrison Jr. An impressive grab. Fake to Connor. Murray on the rollout, looking deep for Harrison! Marvin Harrison! Harrison Jr. to the end zone. Touchdown again.
Kept doing double takes at my screen as I was watching that one. Time for Rookie Watch. It is presented by New Era. I was a little worried. Week 1, 1 catch, 4 yards. Boom. Just a huge explosion in week number 2.
Yeah, I mean, and look, and Marvin Harrison, it's not going to happen every week, right? We see teams are going to slide coverage is over. It's going to happen probably today because when you think about the Arizona Cardinals, you think about Kyler Murray, James Conner, and now Marvin Harrison. But the one thing you have to like about him is the contested catches. I mean, this coverage is there. And he's got a sideline bordering him, and he's still going up and making the plays. He's going to continue to get better as he starts to understand opposing personnel. Plus, Kyler Murray. I mean, I'm a big Kyler Murray fan, and the fact that he's showing that he's still a very good player, that's going to be a big thing right here. This is poor coverage here on a breakdown. You know, Harrison should have been going, but again, the fact that he can make the contested catches, I don't see him slowing down with his physical specs.
Yeah, there's some real improvement from this team. Tough test in week 1 against Buffalo. They more than hung tough. I think there were some people doubting whether they could beat the Rams. They did that in dominant fashion. We'll pick the game against the Lions a little bit later here on Game Day Preview. And this one as well. Eagles looking for a win against a perfect Saints squad. Back here on Game Day Preview, Saquon Barkley trying to put that third down drop on Monday Night Football in the rearview mirror. It's Eagles and Saints in New Orleans, and that's where Bridget Condon is.
9 months ago, Derek Carr was booed off this very field. Since then, he's leading the NFL in almost every major passing metric. He's also thriving under new offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak, who Carr says is allowing him to play freely. On the other side of things, the Eagles are coming off a tough Monday night loss. Linebacker Jacoby Dean told me the locker room was in disbelief after that game. It was silent until quarterback Jalen Hurts told everyone to pick their heads up and remember, it's all about how you recover from that adversity. The biggest challenge for the Eagles today will be trying to stop Alvin Kamara, who leads the league with 4 rushing touchdowns. The Eagles defense has struggled stopping the run all season. Now let's head to Omar Ruiz in Pittsburgh.
Bridget, Chargers quarterback Justin Herbert is active and expected to start. He tested out that high ankle sprain with about a 30-minute warm-up a couple hours before kickoff and really put pressure on that ankle with calf raises and a lot of high knees. Seemed to be moving okay. He then proceeded to warm up his arm and seemed to throw with as much velocity as he normally does. The only time he appeared to favor that ankle was on those quick 3-step drops as opposed to the deeper 5 and 7-step drops. So Justin Herbert good to go against the Steelers. For more now on the Cowboys and the Ravens, let's send it over to Jane Slater.
Tough day at the office last Sunday for the Cowboys defensive line when you consider they gave up almost 200 yards on the ground and 4 scores. Now, already a defensive line that was struggling in the interior is dealing with Mozzie Smith, who on Wednesday exited practice with back tightness. I'm told those back problems are still lingering, and he is what they are considering a true game-time decision. So we'll see him out here for warm-ups and see how it is. When I asked how they're handling this, they said, what can you do? So they got to roll it out here. It doesn't help, though, that you've got the Ravens coming to town that featured the most efficient run game with Lamar Jackson, a very dynamic mobile quarterback, and Derrick Henry, who's proven he's still got a lot of juice.
He does, Jane. It's time for Who Scores, presented by DraftKings Sportsbooks, and Derrick Henry is probably a good place to start here. 2 touchdowns in 2 games so far this season. Dak threw for 293 against the Saints a week ago. Just from context, we got more on Dak from a fantasy perspective still to come. In Lamar Jackson, the reigning MVP, averaging over 83 rushing yards per game. So I ask you in this particular matchup, who scores?
I'm going counter to the Derrick Henry, and I'm going to his backup, Justice Hill.
Wow, okay.
And you saw, his carries and his touches diminished some last week against the Raiders, but they like using him towards the end of games and in the pass game. He had 6 receptions against Kansas City in the opener. I think he's someone who's going to be snuck out there and catch a touchdown pass.
Yeah, I'm sort of excited for this matchup before the season started, and excited for this one as well. I'm referring to the Rams hosting the Niners right across the street at SoFi Stadium.
Ooh.
I'm like doing the list, going like, who's playing in this game? Who's the guy that you got find in the end zone?
Well, Brandon Ayuk, all right? He's the wide receiver for the 49ers, who's yet to really do much in his first 2 games of the season. Now he's the guy. George Kittle's out. Deebo Samuel's out, so he has to
Christian
step
McCaffrey's
up.
out.
Christian McCaffrey's out. So the Rams are going to be targeting him, but he's somebody who can make those contested catches. So this is time for Brandon Ayuk to get into the end zone. We know your guy Juwan Jennings is another target, but I think this is where Ayuk really breaks through.
Oh, yeah, there'll be another Jennings reference before we finish up here on Game Day Preview. Falcons and Chiefs. I saw on social media you got an opportunity to hang with the owner of the Falcons, so you got one of his guys, maybe?
With Arthur Blank, the answer is no.
Okay.
But look, this is like the Falcons Super Bowl. I mean, Arthur Blank said this is one of the biggest games he's had in his career, owning the team for 20 years. They have played in Super Bowls and NFC Championship games, but that's what type. I'm going with Samaje Perine, who'll be the Chiefs' starting running back. The way the Chiefs' offensive line, it's a little shaky, but I think they'll be able to move in the ground game a little bit. Perine's also good, as a receiver out of the backfield. I just think this Chiefs team they know it's going to be a down and dirty kind of knuckle-to-knuckle type of game, and Perine's a guy who can punish and get the ball into the end zone.
Cynthia Freeland's going to be back on set with us. We will pick this game a little bit later, and just in case you're wondering, yes, that's a pro move by Steve White. Get the interview with the owner before you decide who is going to go and find that end zone. DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 place to bet touchdowns this season, and this week new customers can bet $5 and pocket $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the app and use the promo code GAME when you sign up. DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours.
There's 9 2-0 teams right now. Let's remove the defending Super Bowl champs from the equation. Let's remove the Texans too. Buffalo.
Flips into the end zone for the touchdown.
Pittsburgh.
Steelers pretty much unbeatable. Can I say it? How sweet it is, baby.
Chargers.
Who's got it better than us?
The Vikings.
Justin Jefferson putting on a show.
Seattle Seahawks.
And there are a lot of 12s with their arms up right now saying 2-0.
And the only division with multiple 2-0 teams in it.
Fire the cannons one more time, Buccaneers. A lot of weeks left, and it ain't gonna stop. Hey, let's go for 3-0 next week.
3-0 certainly has a nice ring to it. Look, games matter, especially earlier in the season. 2-0 team since 1990, 64% chance of making the postseason, which got us thinking about a little contender-pretender action here. The Pittsburgh Steelers, one of those teams, offensively, having some issues, though, but they're still perfect on the year. Are they a contender or a pretender?
First off, I hate the pretender.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys aren't pretenders, but I'm fitting them into the category as they're not going to win the division, right? I just think the Browns, this is a case where the other teams in the division are going to end up being better than them because they can't score. That defense cannot carry you for all 17. So I'm going to put the Steelers in the P category, but I am not going to actually call them pretenders, even though they're not going to win their division.
Yeah, the team that they're playing today, the Chargers, who, by the way, will have Justin Herbert. Side note, who's got it better than us? Nobody. Chargers, pretender.
And I've got them in the same situation as the Steelers, right? They're off to this hot start, but the fact that you've got an injured quarterback, they've got really no explosives in the passing game. This run game can carry you so much, especially once you get more and more tape. So I'm going to put them in the P category. Word as well. I don't think they're going to end up being a playoff team.
All right, so you got a couple of pretenders here. I'm thinking about some teams that can make a run, and two certainly come to mind. Saints, Bucks in that division. Either one of these squads, are they contenders?
They're both contenders.
Okay.
Right? I'm going to say contenders here because they're both going to be in the playoff mix. I'm going to put the Falcons in that playoff mix as well because, one, this division, it is always cannibalism. They're not going to have one team run away with the NFC South. But the Saints, we're seeing their offense light it up. It's not always going to be this way, but they do have their defense to be their bread and butter, right? That defense has always been one of the better defenses. Same with the Buccaneers. Very well coached. They do have some explosive plays. Both these teams have experienced quarterbacks. That's why I'm putting the Falcons in there, too. That's going to help them grind out some tough games. But the Saints and the Bucks are contenders.
This division's fun, man.
It's fun.
It was a different conversation if the Falcons had lost on Monday night. Now, all of a sudden, you go, hey, maybe they're the real deal. More on Falcons and Chiefs still to come. You know who else is a contender? The Houston Texans.
Yes, they are.
You know why they're a contender? Because C.J. Stroud is an absolute machine out on the football field. In the sophomore campaign, still probably a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. On the road, we told you they're road warriors. They're matching up against the Vikings. More on this game still to come on Game Day Preview. You know, it's all relative. When you're 29 in the NFL at the running back spot, maybe someone will say a little bit, I miss 29 in a dramatic way. Alvin Kamara flashing back a little bit, leading the NFL, 5 touchdowns, averaging 5.7 yards per carry. Dude's got almost 300 yards from scrimmage. He's been a baller. Michael F. Florio, by the way, start and sit, NFL.com. One person who I know is locked in on these articles, Mike, every single week. It's Steve White. He told me right before you popped on. So take me through this here, and let's actually start with some of these quarterbacks. Guys that we should start or sit, who stands out?
Yeah, well, shout out to you, Steve Weiss, for reading the article each week. That's greatly appreciated. Yeah, lots of quarterbacks that I think you want to start and sit this week. I have Brock Purdy as a start in a great matchup against the Rams. Baker Mayfield is the QB1 right now. I'm not getting off of him. Derek Carr is the QB2. I'm continuing to start him. Jared Goff, I'm giving him another chance in a good matchup. And then Joe Burrow in the best matchup for quarterbacks. My sits, we're going to talk Dak. Wow. I also have Justin Herbert, a banged-up Justin Herbert as a sit. I'm sitting Matthew Stafford and Trevor Lawrence as well, who just has not been going so far this season.
All right, can we dive into Dak here? I'm almost a little surprised here. You're sitting a guy that offensively needs to show out.
Yeah, it's partially because of that reason there. Dak has not looked like Dak, at least for a fantasy standpoint so far this year. He has yet to score 13 fantasy points in either of his games. He has just 1 touchdown in each of those as well, but it's also largely because of the Ravens defense. They've done a good job of getting after the quarterback this season. They've only allowed 2 passing touchdowns so far this year. We saw them limit Patrick Mahomes to just 15 fantasy points in week 1. And I know this isn't the same defense as last year, but in their last 14 games, a quarterback has reached 18 fantasy points just 1 time. So if you have another option, I'm okay getting away from Dak.
Okay, so Mike dipping into some of the historical knowledge to make the Dak call here. Running backs this season, and I don't want to say every season, but it feels like outside of a certain small group of names, it's hard to find consistent success. Mike, take me through some of these start-sits coming out of the backfield.
Yeah, must start Mason as long as CMC is out, especially with a great matchup. Zach Charbonnet, as long as Kenneth Walker sits, he gets so much volume that you need to play him. I'm giving Zamir White one last chance. If he cannot come through in this matchup, I will freak out. And then Brian Robinson Jr., he's been getting so much work. I like the matchup there. My sits, Najee Harris in a tough matchup against the Chargers. DeAndre Swift, you might not have a better option, but if you do, I would take it. Javonte, because the Bucs run defense has been tough. Same reason for Devin Singletary. And then Jerome Ford. We saw last week Deontay Foreman take more work when they had a lead. I think this is a game where the Browns will be winning, which means it might be a Foreman week over Ford.
All right, let's double down on White here. How hard was it to put him in this category of start?
It's hard when you look at what he's done so far, but then you see the matchup, and I'm like, yeah, I have to start this guy. The Panthers allowed the most yards before contact per carry, meaning that White should have a chance for some big runs, get going before he's touched. Running backs have ran all over the Panthers for the last year plus, and so far this year, they have the 4th most fantasy points per game against them. Antonio Pierce keeps saying he wants to feed him more. This is the game. If it doesn't happen today, I will be concerned.
By the way, because I know you sort of hedged a little bit on Swift. It didn't sound like you were all the way out on him for what it's worth. Cynthia Freeland, who was sitting with us a little while ago, and she's going to be with us later here on the show, she felt like Swift was someone to put in your lineup as a start. So maybe there's some debate. You guys can get that going on a text thread a little bit later, and one of you will have trash talking rights at the end of the day. Wide receivers, take me through the names that are the starts and the sits for you.
I'm rolling with Chris Godwin and Jameson Williams. Sure. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think this is a big week for Brandon Ayuk. I'm going with both Seahawks here in DK and JSN, and then George Pickens is a start for me. I'm trying to get away from Amari Cooper as best I can. Same thing with Michael Pittman Jr., Jaden Reed because no Jordan Love, and then Christian Kirk and Terry McLaurin, 2 guys that I liked coming in but just have been struggling to start the year.
Why Pickens as a start? I mean, this offense has really struggled.
Yeah, if you just looked at the box score last week, you would think Pickens didn't have a good game, but he had a 51-yard beautiful catch and throw call back. He also had a touchdown call back due to penalty. That's nearly 14 fantasy points taken off the board. But on those plays, it really looked like him and Justin Fields are starting to develop chemistry and get on the same page. He has safe volume with a near 30% target share, and they use him downfield a lot, so he always brings a high ceiling, and I think he might be one of the tougher tests for the Chargers defense so far. So I'm willing to take the shot on the high upside of George Pickens.
Yeah, he is fun to watch out on that football field. Meanwhile, time for Who's Eating Good, presented by Applebee's. I want to stick with this wide receiver theme. Jamar Chase, why do you feel like he could put up some big numbers?
One, because he's Jamar Chase and his quarterback is Joe Burrow, and we know that eventually those two are going to get cooking. And last year they started off slow, and then they had a great matchup against the Cardinals, and both went off. This matchup cannot get any better. The Commanders have allowed the most yards and touchdowns to receivers since last season. They have allowed the most touchdowns to receivers so far this year. And with T. Higgins healthy, defenses won't be able to just clamp down on Jamar Chase like they have the first 2 weeks. They'll actually have to pay some attention to another pass catcher there. I just think this is the week where all of the Cincinnati Bengals are going to remind the world, like, hey, we are still a very good offense. And there's reason why you should trust us. So the buy low window is quickly closing for Jamar Chase. You got about another, 36 hours until the kickoff. Get it done ASAP.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. A Monday night game. By the way, 2 Monday night games. And Steve is going to be hanging out with me on NFL Network as soon as they are over. We got you covered for game day final. Mike, you are the best man. Always appreciate the insight that you provide. All of us fantasy owners, just trying to get a W. That's all we want to do. We'll talk to you real soon, bud. I don't know where we net out on things like this. Love in the air in the dog pound. The proposal, romantic, not romantic? I don't know.
My wife lives in.
Okay, yeah. We got a yes, though, and that's all that matters. We got more on Game Day Preview. Game day preview, Sam Darnold, 72% completion percentage, passer rating flirting with 112 over the first 2 games of the season. The guy has been stellar so far. We will see the Vikings hosting the Houston Texans. We will pick that game and give you some more context around which way could go a little bit later here on Game Day Preview. But I know you're trying to make those last-minute adjustments here, active and inactive. Sort of not a surprise. Russell Wilson won the starting job. He hasn't played now in 3 consecutive weeks. We will not see him out on the football field. Joe Mixon, yeah, also inactive, a monster in week number 1, still banged up with that ankle injury. For a little bit more on what is happening with regard to some of these quarterbacks, no one better to talk to than one of our insiders, Mike Garafolo, who joins us right now. All right, Mike, Justin Herbert, we heard the news about him being a little dinged up with an ankle sprain. What can you tell me about that injury?
Yeah, that ankle sprain is something that Justin Herbert is going to power through because he powers through as much as he possibly can when it comes to injuries. But the fact that the Chargers have activated all 3 quarterbacks, and not in the sense usually you have the emergency quarterback, you can have your 3rd quarterback available. In this case, all are active because that 3rd quarterback, if he plays in a game, he's the only one that can play the rest of the way. So the Chargers wanting as much flexibility as they possibly can with Justin Herbert dealing with what he called a high ankle sprain, which you very rarely see a player play through, but he's going to try to do this here today against the Chargers. So keep an eye on that because I know at some point last week the Chargers were discussing the possibility of using multiple quarterbacks. They'd like to be able to go wire to wire in this game with Justin Herbert, who will start, but they're going to keep a close eye on him, and we should as well.
Yeah, I know we talked about it from a fantasy perspective, but if you're just joining us, if you got another option that's not named Justin Herbert for your lineup, might want to lean that way. Mike, Jordan Love, I can't believe I'm asking you this question. How close is this dude from being back on the football field?
Close, and definitely closer than last week because you saw the way that the Packers handled it last week. They downgraded him to doubtful when they called up Sean Clifford from the practice squad. In this case, they kept him as questionable yesterday when they called up Clifford, and he went through that full pregame routine there that you're seeing in Tennessee. So my belief is that he is getting a lot closer than maybe we thought he was going to be when we first heard that timeline of anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks. This could potentially be only a 2-week absence for Love and the Packers as they get back to practice next week. He's going to participate. I know he was limited, which is all Matt LaFleur would say last week when he was talking to reporters. And perhaps he'll be limited maybe even to start the week, but I think he's got a real shot to return after missing only 2 games. Excited in the meantime for the Malik Willis revenge game against the Titans.
I like where your head's at. By the way, as the news trickles in during the course of the week, I know insiders on NFL Network, you guys will have everyone covered on his health. Mike, enjoy the games today. Always good to see you here with us on Game Day Preview. All right, time for some quick picks here. Chiefs to Falcons, and guess who's back? Yes, Cynthia Freeland ready to rock and roll. I'll let you start here because you talked to Arthur Blank, the owner. And
yeah. Sunday night game, he's going to the Ring of Honor. Huge game for the Falcons, but I still like the Chiefs in this game. I think their defense is too good.
Sure.
I don't know if the Chiefs can continue to play at a high level week to week. It's tough, but their defense is just too stout.
I'm with you. I have the Chiefs as well. I also think that this could be an interesting spot where we see Travis Kelce reemerge. I actually have a touchdown forecast for both of the tight ends in this matchup. A little bit higher odds for Kyle Pitts than for Travis Kelce, but Rashee Rice, huge day.
I'm looking at the monitor. Yeah, that's not a mistake. I'm rolling with the Falcons here. You know, I have loved my time with you on Monday nights so far this season. We have a blast watching the games, and we do the post-game show together. We watch Kirk Cousins,
Kirk O'Chains,
orchestrate a game-winning drive where he was surgical out on the football field. It's the reason why they paid this guy the money. I think the Falcons just needed one of these moments to see, oh, by the way, like, we're a good football team. We can win these tough games. This game was played in Philadelphia. This is a home game today against the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm going to roll with the ATL.
Their defense has played well.
Yeah, it has. All right, Panthers and Raiders across the board. Cynthia, I'll let you start here. I think we're all kind of on the same page for this one.
Yeah, Zamir White, you want to play him in fantasy. Brock Bowers, we'll get to that in a minute. But also a fun note here, this is the first time in NFL history that 2 female presidents match up against each other.
I love it.
Oh,
Carolina Panthers and the Raiders both have female presidents. So obviously it's going to be a great matchup, which is going to, surpass anyone's expectations.
I love hearing, that as we continue to make strides, in the DEI space in the NFL. Look, this is one. Max Crosby's playing on a bad ankle. Doesn't matter. He's still going to get at least 1 or 2 sacks. Carolina Panthers' offensive line is horrible. This is one where the Raiders they should walk. I mean, the Panthers.
One note here: if you're desperate in fantasy, you could consider Deontay Johnson, or you could consider Adam Thielen for this matchup. If you really need some help.
Whoa.
Desperate.
Yeah, if you need some help, right?
Well, because Andy Dalton's better against the zone. Like, there's a number of reasons why, but I'm not saying to start them over like your main starters, but in general.
By the way, I saw your interview with Max Crosby last week when they scored that win. I know he was fired up. The dude is relentless out on the football field. Lions, I know where you're going to be leaning against the Cardinals, but look, Arizona's played well so far this season. You like the Lions too?
I do like the Lions. I don't think they've played their best game yet. I say week 3 is kind of the clarity in terms of teams finding their identity. I think this is where the Lions hit their stride.
This is where I'm not picking based on my heart, because as a Lions fan, I would pick the Cardinals. However, the math here says that the Lions should win this game because their running is more efficient. So number 1 in terms of the next-gen stat that does rushing efficiency, they're number 1. So both running backs you should play.
Clean sweep for Dolphins on the road in Seattle. It is not quiet there and still no Tua. Why are we? Is it going to be close? I know we're all picking Seattle.
Yeah, I think that obviously if there's a guy who thinks going to have a trick or two up his sleeve is the guy that coaches the Dolphins. So I'm not suggesting that this is going to be a runaway victory, but I do think that even like it's a really disadvantageous travel across the country, probably the farthest distance in the continental United States or whatever that metric is. But just in general, just too many things that are potentially wrong. Geno Smith, if you're playing daily fantasy, Geno Smith could be a good daily fantasy quarterback.
Asking Skylar Thompson to play against that defense is just too much. I mean, Boye Mafe, these guys are getting after the quarterback. The secondary is excellent. I just think it's just a tough ask for Skylar.
Yeah, clean sweep here as we are rolling with Seattle. Meanwhile, one of the marquee matchups of the weekend, it is Derek Carr, who just continues. Yes, he's got some dance moves as well, which certainly has grabbed our attention. We got a Saints team matching up against a Philadelphia squad that needs a win in such a meaningful way coming off that loss on Monday night. Meanwhile, Cam Jordan, the Off the Edge podcast, we're usually showing you a clip of one of the conversations that he's had with other players, but with the team rolling, Cam gave us his take on the impressive start to the season.
You look like, dang, these are teams to watch out for. I'm going to put my Saints in the category at all times as team to watch out for. But, we've started off 2-0.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Just saying. Not even a lot of people. I think no one had us picked to win the Cowboys. Like, we walked into that game and our head coach, Dennis Allen, put us on the board like all the analysts or whatever, and they're like, yo, this guy that has Cowboys pick, this guy has Cowboys pick, and it was all like 27-22, 20-28, 20, what, all these random numbers, bro. It's like, damn, nobody gave us a shot.
I probably had y'all counted out too, but that's the nature of the beast.
I've been singing our praises all, headed into it. I was like, why can't we win? Why can't we be great? We've got Rashid Shaheed, we got Chris Olave, naming all your stars, Alvin Kamara, you've got, and then you come up to the first 2 games and you drop like 91 points in 2 games.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Kayvon Thibodeau keeping it real, and Cam knows the numbers. 91 points, most points scored in the first 2 games of the season. It is right there, up there with everyone. Actually tied for second with the Dallas Cowboys. By the way, the other 2 teams, they did go to win the Super Bowl. We don't even want to think about that just yet here. Let's just worry about
real quick, is Derek Carr wearing the J11s? Is he warming up in the J11s?
Wow.
Look at the Jordan 11.
Man,
you
got the keen eye when it comes to the footwear, which I do. I like. You had mentioned this to me, and it was something we talked about on Monday Night Football on the postgame show. No A.J. Brown, like that's potentially an issue here.
For Philadelphia, absolutely. I mean, look, he's their deep threat. He's also their physical contested catch guy. There's a Slim Reaper, Devontae Smith. We know how good he is, but you saw even in screen games, they were asking him to block corners. He can't do it. I mean, it's just not his thing. Not having A.J. Brown changes his offense. It's going to be more Saquon Barkley in the run and pass games. Look, Philadelphia can just go ahead and explode. I mean, I think they're going to play better than they did the other night, but just not having A.J. Brown against this defense puts them in a tough spot.
I want to know what happened in week 3 of that year that the Saints had their 93 points, because I imagine if they won, that would have been in the research packet, but because it's not, probably it wasn't a win. But I'm looking here at the fact that what we've seen from the Saints offense has been the same trick over and over again. 80.5% of plays have either been a run, outside zone running scheme, or play action. What happens when one of those 2 things doesn't work? And that's my question. Because if the Eagles, who I know Vic Fangio can sit here and be like, interesting stuff here, let's make this stuff. if that can happen, and by the way, Jalen Carter didn't get in trouble this week for whatever the heck he got in trouble for last week. He's not going to miss the beginning of the game. That's a huge deal. This is the type of thing where that little tiny change, what happens if they're not playing with a lead? It's easy to score 91 points.
Yes, it is.
When you're winning.
Yes, it is.
Earlier in the show, you said you're not hitting the panic button on the Eagles. Based off of your comments here, you like the Eagles, right?
Straight up. Go rolling with the Eagles on this one. That's the math. The math says if they get themselves in just a few of these deep plays, I know it would be better if A.J. Brown were there. Yes. I got you. But remember, you got Saquon, you got the middle. Cam Jordan's podcast is called Off the Edge. They're much better in the middle than off the edge, right? So the edges, they'll just run in the middle, the Eagles. Yep. And stay away from.
Stand up and get crunk. It's going to be a party down in the Dome today for the Saints.
The math is mathing for Cynthia, not for Steve and I. Rolling with the Saints. Texans and Vikings. We have been highlighting this, at least when we're talking about the
game of the week.
No Joe Mixon in this one, but C.J. Stroud is still the real deal. You had mentioned this to me, sort of an off-the-cuff comment before we came on air. You think that this might be the best, most talented roster in the NFL.
It is. It is. I mean, at every position, the Texans are pretty much 2 deep, sometimes 3 deep. They're loaded at all these levels. And look, C.J. Stroud, in this game, he's going to be challenged. As Cynthia mentioned earlier, Brian Flores is going to show him stuff he has not seen. And he said that he can't be out there seeing ghost. He's going to see some ghost out there. He's got to stick to his fundamentals. Cam Akers is going to be in the running back. He's actually a perfect fit for the scheme. So I think we're going to see some Cam Akers running the ball, but spread it out. He's going to face some pressure. He has got to keep his poise. Big test for C.J. Stroud.
I just want to give it up for Sam Darnold here for a second, because wouldn't all of us like to find ourselves in a position where our employer wanted us to succeed so badly that they can create this scheme? And oh, by the way, it helps that Justin Jefferson's there. Yeah. And oh, by the way, like this Cam Akers backup thing is it's so interesting on both sides, right? Like they think they can stop him. Like Minnesota's defense, I don't care.
As they should.
Like I don't care. I'm familiar with you, Kevin O'Connell. I'm familiar with all the tricks that you. No problem. But I want my entire offense, my entire career to be guided by someone who wants me to succeed that badly.
In other words, Kevin O'Connell's a great head coach.
KOC, great guy.
Great head coach.
So we say all that to say that all of us are rolling with the Texans.
Yes. But I had to give some love to Sam. We love Sam.
Yeah.
Just don't think he's going to win.
Texans defense, man, too good.
Yeah. And we always focus in on the offense, and we have highlighted the Texans' defense in this show. By the way, both of these defense doing a great job, 1 and 2 in terms of sacks and getting quarterback pressures. Yeah. So defense should potentially reign supreme. Sunday statement time. Let's go. What do you got for me?
Well, I was wrong last week, but this is the week. Brock Bowers will have his first touchdown as a pro this week against the Carolina Panthers. He'll have to do it quickly because I don't expect them to be playing from behind long enough to keep throwing the ball. Like last week, I don't necessarily think +9 catches, +90 yards, but I do think a trip to the end zone. He was so close.
That dude is such a good player.
I was an inch away from being right last week, and I'm going to keep coming back to this Sunday statement until it becomes true. So
well, he's probably going to come through this week. He's a hell of a player.
Yes.
Look, I am going to go to the Bears-Colts game, and Bears rookie quarterback Caleb Williams is going to run for a touchdown and throw one. This is a breakthrough game because Shane Waldron probably finally figures out he's got to run the football to set up the run action and play action, and this is a team to run against.
Yeah. By the way, so we do our production meetings during the week. I never show up with a Sunday statement. It's almost embarrassing. I'm going to go to the well. You just gave me a great idea.
Great.
Let's just keep double downing on the same one until it actually hits.
Survivor deal.
Martindale. It's a Martindale strategy.
Yeah, no. But this week, although this is probably not the week for me to double down because if it doesn't happen this week, I don't.
Is it about the Giants?
No, no. I've already learned my lesson with some of the picks. Juwan Jennings.
There you go.
It was like, who's playing in this game for the San Francisco 49ers? We know about Christian McCaffrey. Debo is out. George Kittle, I saw that news last night. I'm like, all right, I get it. Brandon Ayuk's going to ball. Juwan Jennings, first 2 games of the season, and that's with guys relatively healthy. 9 targets to the first 2 games. You know what he's never done before?
What?
That's hit triple digits in receiving yards. I think we are looking at a 100-yard receiving game for Juwan Jennings.
I love it.
Actually, let me rewind here. You know why I'm not going to be able to use this one next week? Because it's going to happen today.
That's right. Yeah. That's the same with mine. That's the same with mine.
I have seen him put it on the Rams. He is a chain mover. We know that. He's great on getting first downs, but against the Rams, he's had some nice games.
Yeah. Look, it happens. The blind squirrel will find a nut every once in a while. This might be my week. Cynthia, you are awesome. Steve, we get to do this again tomorrow night. I'm Mike and for our entire crew. Appreciate you guys watching Game Center. It's coming up next here on the NFL channel.